I'm not gonna lie, I almost forgot about it until I got your message on Instagram.
My bad, dude. I should have like sent you like a reminder ahead of time
No,
or something.
no, I told my wife, she goes, "Why didn't you put it on your calendar?" I was like, I forgot. You know,
Nah, it's
so
all good, dude. I'm glad that you were able to make it.
yeah, yeah, still able to
You made
make it. So
you made it work, so that's
yeah,
cool.
yeah, man.
All right, what's up, everyone? We're about to get started here in a little bit. We're going to be going over SummerSlam 2005. You were at this show, right, Jay?
I was in Washington D.C. It was called the MCI Center at the time.
Is that where you're from, Washington D.C.?
No, I'm originally from New York, but moved from New York down to Virginia. So DC is the closest arena that we have. So yeah, I've been here
Nice.
most of my life in DC, in the DMV as we call it. So yeah,
I was gonna ask you about that. I was like, so some people know you as Jay on Wrestling, but then you're
hmm
on TikTok as Jay from DMV, and I'm like, the
yeah.
fuck does that stand for?
It stands for DC, Maryland, and Virginia. So that's what we call it out here.
Um,
Yeah, within that
it's like
little.
Department of Motor Vehicles.
Exactly. Yeah, you got to be
Okay.
from this area to understand it. But yeah, so
Well, good. And now that I got that cleared up, welcome back, Jay. Thank
thank
you
you.
for coming back. And what have you been up to lately besides starting TikTok beefs?
Besides starting TikTok beefs, just chilling, watching wrestling, playing some video games, and enjoying the winter break.
Oh yeah, you started adding video game content to your channels, right?
I did. Trying to just change it up a little bit, add something else that I enjoy doing. So yeah.
Dude, I've been following with like your video game content because
hmm
I got a PlayStation 5 a while ago
hmm
because they're like, "Oh, there's going to be all these great games that are going to be coming out for PS5 and you should get a PS5." So I did,
Yeah.
and I've just been playing the same shit over and over again, which
Yeah.
is Fortnite, Call of
hmm
Duty, and FIFA.
Ah, see, I've been getting into a
Yeah.
lot of different things. I got into God of War Ragnarok. I've been playing a lot of remastered Resident Evil games. So some horror games out there too. Besides, the regular 2K, WWE 2K games, trying to venture out and play different stuff. So, but yeah, I got a PS5 as well. So I
Mhm.
just just been playing a lot of new games. So trying some different things out.
Yeah, so I'm gonna be keeping up with what you post on there, so I can get an idea, get some ideas of what games to get next.
Yeah.
Because it's getting old playing the same old shit.
Yeah.
But no, the reason I bring up the Twitter beefs or whatever, that was just
hmm
that was just a joke. But we're actually gonna be doing not really like a debate episode. I don't really
Yeah.
want to call it that because I feel like that word debate seems like really confrontational. But
Yeah.
I'm gonna be having you on with Suplex Media to go over some of the topics that you and him have been talking back and forth about and kind of discussing on TikTok.
Yeah.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about that and like what to expect?
I mean, again, it's not gonna sound. This may sound a little one-sided, but just it's more of a disagreement on how we both view. Because for the longest time, he worked for OVW, as we all know. OVW for a long time ago was the original developmental for WWE, but then it became its own thing. He worked there for 5 years, so he understands wrestling from a different perspective. The disagreement is, he has a bit of an issue of the way some wrestling fans look at the business side of wrestling. We're talking about ratings, but nobody really cares about ratings. But my thing with that is that people are gonna look at wrestling the way they want to look at wrestling. And the one thing that I've been trying to get from him is why does it bother him so much? And he's just trying to he's saying that he's trying to get people out of discussing the business side of wrestling and just to enjoy it, which I understand that. But people are going to want to process things very different. And I think the one thing that I keep telling him is that people want to make this beef between AEW and WWE like the Monday Night Wars, talk about ratings and all that stuff, and that's what people are sticking on to. And it doesn't help it when people like Dave Meltzer and Tony Khan post the ratings and all that stuff, and people want to talk about that. So it is a bit of a back and forth. I try, I let him know that it's not me trying to attack him. It's just me trying to figure out why does it bother him so much. and people are going to talk about that. It's like when people talk about comic book characters and they get mad where they're not depicted the same way. But why does it bother you if it's just a superhero? Well, this is how I know Wolverine to be in a comic, or Superman, but in the movie they're not like that. So people are going to disagree on it. I just want to ask. I just need to tell him that, why does it bother him if people want to talk about ratings? It's a function. It's a metric that people use to show you what's better. Whether it's not the financial situation, but it's a metric that people want to use on people, on what people are watching. So
yeah, it's gonna be a fun time. I'm looking forward
yeah,
to that. I believe we're gonna be doing that on the
19th.
on the 19th.
I
Thank you.
put that
Yeah.
one on my calendar, like my wife told me to.
Good, yeah. So yeah, be on the lookout for that on the 19th. But
Hmm.
today we're gonna be going over an iconic SummerSlam, 2005 SummerSlam, and dude, there's so many memorable matches and
Hmm.
memorable feuds in this one that
Yes.
still get talked about today. So I'm
Hmm.
really hyped to go over this
Yes.
one with you, man. Some of the matches, just to give you guys a better idea, was the custody ladder match, the famous Eddie Guerrero versus Rey Mysterio match for the custody of Dominic Mysterio.
Hmm.
Matt Hardy versus Edge, another fucking intense feud that
Yes.
that we'll be going over. Some other matches like Chris Benoit versus Orlando Jordan, and the main event was Hulk Hogan versus Shawn Michaels. So we got a lot to talk about here, Jay.
Yes.
Are you ready?
I am ready, sir.
All right, let's do it.
Let's go.
All of his stuff looked good, so probably too good because it was probably snug, but he was different in everything that he did. He locked up different. He locked up snug.
Hey, this is your Olympic hero, Kurt Angle, and you're listening to Snug Wrestling. Oh, it's true. It's damn true.
All right, welcome back, y'all. Edgar here, like always. I'm the host, and today JayOnWrestling is going to help me go over SummerSlam 2005. This was in Washington, D.C., and this was the year 2000, right, Jay?
2005. Yes, it was
Oh,
in
I'm
the
sorry.
2005. Yep.
Yeah, 2005. I just said that. Sorry. 2005, but this was still WWF, or was it WWE at this point?
No, it was WWE at this point. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think they lost the WWF between 2001 2002, so they were already within the WWE name already.
Wow. Okay. What the fuck? All right, we're off to a rough start. Okay, let me get my shit together real quick. It felt like WWF, this pay per view to me. That's why I mentioned WWF because there was first of all the there was a segment. Was this okay? Because I watched multiple pay per views today, and I
Hmm.
don't remember. Was there did Vince McMahon, was this the one where Vince McMahon pulled up getting his car washed by a bunch of divas? I think I'm confusing it.
That's no, I don't think it was this one. Not that
Okay,
I can remember. I don't think
all
it was
right.
this one.
So all right, start over. Scratch. Blah, my bad, John. My bad. So the way that this one started was Lillian Garcia
She was
with
singing America,
yeah,
or yeah, America the Beautiful.
national anthem. A very
Yep.
very young Lillian Garcia. You were in the arena for this. How was this opening with Lillian Garcia? She got a nice pop. I got kind of chills a little bit, but tell me, you were there in the arena. How did you feel listening to Lillian Garcia here?
It was good. Like, she's always had an awesome voice, singing voice. So when she sung it, people stood up. And then when she stopped, because we're in the nation's capital, so it means it hits a little different than when you talk about it. But it was good. Standing ovation after she finished singing it. People showing respect. The arena was silent, showing respect for our nation's capital. So yeah.
Yeah. All right, let's get started with the matches then. The first match, the opening match for this was Chris Benoit versus Orlando Jordan.
Hmm.
And Orlando Jordan was the United States champion. This match was for the title.
Hmm.
And what a way to kick off the show, because this match ended unexpectedly in record time. This was a match that I think Chris Benoit, the guy who shall not be named,
Been named, yeah.
yeah, he I think he won the championship, the United States title, quicker than anyone in history.
Yeah, I think the match was like less than 30 seconds. I felt like as soon as the bell rung, like if you blinked, the entire arena was kind of surprised when it all just finally it just ended like with less than 30 seconds. So it was crazy to see that live, a quick match. But it was as soon as they heard the tap, I mean people went crazy for the one, that should not be named, but it
Mhm.
was a crazy way to start the match, I'll tell you that.
Why do you think they did that though? That way.
I don't know. I guess to show, because I think the story was Orlando Jordan had cheated to win before. I think Benoit and him had a match either on a pay-per-view before or something. I didn't really do the research on that part, but I think they were saying that he could knock him out in record time, and I think that's where the purpose of making this match
Mm.
a squash match, because Orlando Jordan I think had a boxing background, and he was talking about knocking him out and all that stuff. So I think that's where they try to prove that Benoit could beat him at in a split
Yeah.
second. So yeah.
Yeah, and I guess my first initial thought was like this was a cool way to set the tone for this pay-per-view by
Hmm.
starting off a match that way. It got a huge pop.
Yeah.
Um Now Orlando Jordan, at one point he was kind of like the valet, or he was kind of teaming with JBL. Was this
Yes.
after that?
No, this was during that whole JBL because yeah, they were still together as a I think I don't remember what they were called, but they were still together as a group with JBL and Orlando Jordan at the time. So I think they were it was still in the process of about to break them up, but I think they were
Mhm.
still together during this time. Yeah.
Yeah, it sucks to see Orlando lose the championship in that way, but it was cool to see Benoit get the win.
Hmm.
Orlando Jordan was also one of those guys that I feel like he kind of just vanished after a while. I mean, he was the United States champion. I believe that he actually beat John Cena for that title, if I'm not mistaken. So there was a lot of promise there. They teamed
Hmm.
him up with JBL. They beat John Cena, who was a top star at the time.
Yeah.
But then nothing ever really happened with Orlando Jordan. Were you a fan of Orlando Jordan at all, or
I mean,
ever?
I mean, he was okay. I think when he first started, there was some promise there. But I mean, to say that I was a big fan, I can't say that I was. I kind of forgot about him until I watched his pay-per-view, to be honest. So not someone that sticks out in my head. I knew that Benoit was on this card because I mean, at the time he had a lot of fans. But not for Orlando Jordan, not me. So no disrespect to
Yeah,
him.
yeah. So Orlando basically got Lesnar here. The
Hmm.
way that good old Kofi Kingston. Well, now he's not good old Kofi Kingston anymore, but
Yeah.
um, yeah, it kind of reminded me of that. So it was very, very interesting. Hot start to SummerSlam 2005.
Hmm.
Um, then we're gonna go backstage really quick. We had Eddie Guerrero and Vicky Guerrero in a backstage segment, and man, this was Eddie Guerrero's best. I want to say best heel work during this
Yo.
time, wasn't it?
Oh my gosh, dude. It was amazing. I mean, Eddie Guerrero was up there, one my number one favorite wrestler of all time, just because of everything but he was the kind of wrestler that if he was a heel, you hated him. So I mean, and I think that unfortunately this was the year he passed away too. So, but yeah, I mean to see how he could work that heel side live, it was just great. Oh, he was so good
Yeah.
at this. Yeah.
Yeah, he was backstage with Vicky Guerrero. Vicky Guerrero was trying to talk Eddie out of going through with the match. Don't hurt Ray's family.
Hmm.
You know, you're better than this. There's a good person in there. You have a heart of gold. And Eddie pretty much ended up screaming at Vicky Guerrero and just
Hmm.
getting more heat, telling her to, you know, basically to fuck off. But I looked
Yeah.
this up, man. This SummerSlam in 2005, it took place in August
Yeah.
2005, and Eddie Guerrero ended up passing away November 2005. So it was literally like 2 months. This
Yeah.
SummerSlam was 2 months before Eddie passed away, which it's kind of crazy to think about. What do you remember like when during Eddie's passing? We'll talk about the match more
Hmm.
later on, but when Eddie passed away, was he still kind of like a heel during that time?
No, this is when after this he kind of got into a thing with Batista because Batista was on this card too, and he was
Mm.
becoming a babyface slowly, trying to get that part out. So he was
Mhm.
right before he passed away. He was already on the verge of becoming a babyface again. So I think this was coming in closing, and then him and Batista would have a match, and then little by little his baby face would come back right before he passed away.
Mm.
So, but yeah, I mean, he did some awesome heel work here, and then a few months later, he was a full on baby face just to show you what he gets out of people just from his character work. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So that backstage segment there was kind of to hype up the match for later on Eddie versus Ray in a
Hmm.
ladder match, which we'll get into. But moving on from like one very personal feud like this one was Eddie
Hmm.
between Ray and Eddie, we're gonna move on to another crazy personal
Yeah.
rivalry. This one was real, folks. This
This was
actually
yeah.
I'm go ahead. I'm gonna let you explain this one, Jay, with your words.
So this was actually the first match that Edge and Matt Hardy, because that's the match we're talking about next, that they had after Matt Hardy was originally fired, came back to the WWE. This was the first match after all the personal stuff came out with him, with Matt Hardy, Lita, and Edge. So this was actually their first match against each other since all
Mhm.
that personal stuff was let out. So that was also crazy to see.
Yeah, I'm again. I keep forgetting that you were there. So
Yeah.
what was that like for you? Because this was like this was a while ago. This was like 20 years ago, right? So you were
Yeah.
much younger. How do you
Yes.
remember this match?
Oh man, trying to think 20 years ago, Matt Hardy was over as hell. I'm gonna tell you that right
Yeah.
now. Like that motherfucker was over. Like yeah.
Well, because
But
everyone sympathized with him,
everybody
right?
sympathized with it. And then Edge and Lee, like people were the stuff they were yelling at Lita was insane. So
Yeah.
that was aggressive to hear, but this match was like it had the hype, the heat, and all that stuff. So it was interesting to watch because at this point in wrestling, like you didn't know, we knew it was a work, but at this time it was like they were talking about personal stuff. So you have two people going into the ring and you don't know what's actually going to happen. So it was interesting to see this live. So it was crazy because you didn't know
Yeah.
if they were going to kind of go off script or if they were really going to try to take shots at each other. So yeah.
Yeah, dude. It's crazy to think about. And like I said, like, it gets still talked about today because,
Hmm.
for the people that live under a rock that don't know, the story goes Matt Hardy was dating Lita. And then Matt Hardy, for some reason, he had to go away. I don't know if he got fired or he got injured, but then
Hmm.
that led to Edge and Lita spending a lot of time together. That led to Edge and Lita getting together. Basically, Lita ended up cheating on Matt Hardy, and this is all public record. This is all
Hmm.
it's all been reported because they used that real life situation as an angle
Hmm.
for the SummerSlam pay per view, and it's like depending on who you ask, some people like this type of shit. Some people don't like it because
Hmm.
you're basically making money off people's lives,
Yeah.
which back then that used to get done a lot. Obviously,
Hmm.
with the Rey Mysterio and Eddie feud, Matt
Hmm.
Hardy and Edge, we don't really see that a whole lot nowadays. But yeah, when it comes to the match itself, I felt like they were really. This was a stiff match, dude.
Mm-hmm.
They were fucking. They were hitting each other for real,
Yeah.
and I was like, man, are they? I even like watching it now was kind of thinking like, man, they were potatoing the shit out of each other like
Oh,
on purpose, right?
I think they were like, because the thing is, it's different to see it live because you don't get to hear everything as close as you can with all the cameras. So when I went back to rewatch it, like they were like those punches were like landing and the kicks and everything. So they were taking liberties when they could with each other.
Yeah.
So it was so I mean you knew the tension was there, but I mean to see it play it back and watch it, like that shit was stiff. Like they were
Hmm.
really fucking going at it. So you got to admit that.
Yeah. So we heard the stories over time. You know, Lita has spoken about it. Edge. They've all parties have spoken about this rivalry and this angle nowadays. But
Hmm.
I always wonder, like, at one point, or how would that conversation go with like Edge and Matt sitting them down and being like, "Hey, we need you guys to work together, but don't kill each other." You know,
Yeah.
like we need you guys to actually, take care of yourselves and be professionals.
Yeah.
And I mean, they kind of did to a certain extent, right?
I think they did. I mean, at the same time, I mean, they knew how much money they were going to make off of that. So, money talks, bullshit walks. So they knew going out there, they were going to make a ton of money with everything because let alone they already had the history as, the Hardy Boys and Edge versus Christian. But now you add this real element. And I think it just made for just a ton of money for them to make. So they couldn't just throw that out. But yeah, like
Yeah,
you were saying, it is a personal issue. I don't think you could get away with getting that close to the vest with somebody's life. But I mean, this rivalry spoke money, and they went to work. So hey,
they did, dude. They went to work. They put their personal issues aside, and they were
mm-hmm,
they were professionals. And I think that's what made this rivalry so great.
mm-hmm.
And I think Jay, you're gonna get a kick out of this. I thought that we could have had a similar situation recently in AEW with all that shit with CM Punk and the Young Bucks and shit.
Uh, they could have
And
made money off of that.
yeah,
They, yeah. I mean, if CM Punk wouldn't have gotten fired, I mean, there's always a way to kind of go back and kind of retell it, and do it to a point where everybody agrees to go to work the right way. I mean, they would have made a ton of money if everything would have worked out differently.
yeah.
So, hmm
Unfortunately, that wasn't the case. I don't know. Maybe people aren't just built that way anymore. Different
no,
times, or
hmm
but coulda, woulda, shoulda.
yeah.
But yeah. So this match, you said this was the first match between Matt Hardy and Edge, right?
I think after the first time, this was after Matt Hardy came back from being fired. He was rehired, and that's when like he was attacking Edge backstage. So I believe this was their first official match
Hmm.
um since Matt Hardy had come back. But yeah.
So then the rivalry after this continued
Hmm.
because the way that this match ended was the referee called it off because Matt Hardy was not defending himself anymore. He got busted open and he was just not there. So the
Yeah.
referee made a decision to call it. And Edge won, left Matt Hardy laying in the middle of the ring in a bloody mess.
Yeah.
And that was it for that match. It was a very short but intense match.
hmm
And what do you remember about what happened after this? How many matches did they end up having after this? Do you remember?
So I think they ended up having, I think it was what, Unforgiven, that was the pay-per-view after this. They had that really epic cage match where Matt Hardy did the leg drop from the top of the cage,
Mm.
which yeah, so I think they had one more match after that, and then I think there was like a brand split, and then I'm not sure how many more matches they had after that, but I know they had one more that year, which was the big cage match that they ended up having.
Yeah. So Matt Hardy, like you said, he was over. People were
Mm-hmm.
sympathizing with him because how could you not?
Yeah.
The poor guy that got cheated on by this Jezebel
Mm-hmm.
Lita. Man, it was a crazy, crazy feud. Crazy time in wrestling.
Yeah.
With this feud. Anything that you want to add about this one?
Uh,
Because I feel like it's just too crazy to just go
yeah.
over this quick.
Yeah, I mean the match ended really really quick, so there was a lot of surprise on that,
Yeah.
but you could definitely tell that I felt like the reaction of the crowd, everybody was just surprised that it ended, but I don't feel like it was supposed to end that way because when I went to watch it back, I think Matt Hardy like got busted open really bad, so I think that's what it was. But other than that, I mean, people were upset that it ended the way it did. Kind of just booed it, and then they moved on to the next match. But other than that, to see it live, it was a bit of a downer because the way it ended. So yeah.
Mm. Yeah, and then you kind of have like two back-to-back matches that kind of ended all of a sudden too, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. You had the first match that ended really quick, and then this match, I don't know, was like 4 or 5 minutes long, so it wasn't long at all. So yeah.
Yeah. Before we move on to the next match, Jay, I should have
hmm
asked this in the beginning while I was getting my shit together.
hmm
Was there any dark matches or anything before the show? Or what did they do anything else besides the national anthem?
I don't remember a dark match before that. I don't remember. I think it was they just kind of do a lot of announcing and kind of just saying what the crowd to
Mhm.
do. I don't remember a dark match, to be honest with you. I know
Okay.
they normally do. Don't remember if there was one. So
Okay. All right. Dude, we're gonna move on to the Rey Mysterio and Eddie Guerrero custody of Dominic Mysterio.
hmm
Um, the builds, man. I want to start with the build because I don't I'm not sure, and maybe you can help me clarify this, but
hmm
I remember a time where when Eddie Guerrero turned on Rey Mysterio, and Eddie
hmm
Guerrero beat the crap out of Rey Mysterio so bad, left
yeah,
him bleeding. I think he did like a brain buster on the
on the
steel
stairs.
steps.
Yes.
Was that when all of this started? Was this that same feud?
Yes, it was that same
Okay.
year because at the beginning, so this year was that year where Eddie and Ray had that tag team match, the one-on-one match when they were tag team champions at WrestleMania, and then um, Eddie was going through this weird thing because he lost to Ray. So that whole year is when that feud started, and it kind of culminated here at SummerSlam. So they had like two other matches, so this rivalry went for a minute, like it was going for the
Mhm.
majority of the year. So yeah, it was that same year,
Okay.
because I think they had a match, and if Ray would have lost, that's when he would have broken the secret that Eddie was Dominic's dad. But then Eddie still ended up telling the secret, and that's where this match ended up. So yeah, so this feud started at WrestleMania, and it went all the way to SummerSlam. So yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool. That makes more sense then. Yeah, the big secret was that Eddie Guerrero is actual is actually the real father of Dominic Mysterio. It just sounds so crazy to say it even now.
Yeah.
But so there was this story that Eddie was telling that basically he had slept with Rey Mysterio's wife.
I think so. I think yeah. If you go back, I think the way that they were building this story is that they were trying to have a kid, Ray and his wife, and Ray couldn't get his wife pregnant. So Eddie helped to get his wife pregnant, and that's how Dominic came into the world. But you go back and think about it, and you're like, it just sounds weird to say that out loud, but that's where the story came from. So yeah.
I was actually watching this with my wife because
hmm
she not really being like a big wrestling fan herself,
hmm
she knows about this feud
Yeah,
because of how crazy it is. Like non-wrestling fans heard about this shit and they're just like, "What the fuck?" So
I know.
she was like amazed of how good Dominic Mysterio was towards this with his
Mm,
reactions and his
yeah.
facials and stuff. And she brought up a good point. Like, how does a family like agree to doing all this crazy shit? You know, like that's pretty crazy to think about, isn't it?
It is. I mean, to take what a lot of people struggle with and suffer through. I mean, because ironically, the match before this was about an actual couple that got cheated on, and then you go into this where a child's custody is on the line. It's just it is weird to how do you have a conversation and be like, oh, this is what we're gonna do. You're gonna be okay with it, kind of thing. So it is weird when you talk about it out loud. It just sounds so fucking crazy to even think about. So, but it made for good entertainment, I'll tell you that.
Oh yeah, no, it did, dude. It was definitely good content. I mean, people
Mm.
still talk about it, they still remember it, and Dominic Mysterio himself, he's still
Yeah,
living the gimmick, you know?
I know. Well, they were talking about when Liv and Rhea were having their match at SummerSlam to have Dominic's custody because it was so many years later to kind of rehash that funny gimmick. But well, we know how that ended. So
Yeah. Little Dom Shady with
hmm
his
with
Slim
his
Shady haircut.
yeah with the platinum blonde hair.
Yeah, dude. Um so yeah, so they put the briefcase with the custody papers up above like a money in the bank type situation,
Hmm.
and this was a ladder match, and basically whoever reaches that briefcase gets custody of Dominic Mysterio,
Yep,
and they get they fucking set his future, for life,
I know.
this determines the future of Dominic Mysterio
I know.
basically. But the match itself, dude, I didn't remember too much about it, so
Hmm.
when I was rewatching it, it was a crazy ass match, dude. They took a lot of high risks, they took a lot of bumps,
Yeah.
a lot of close calls, man. There was a few times where I thought, oh man, this can end very, very badly.
Yeah.
Um, Definitely I mean, it's a ladder match, so it's a very, very dangerous match for a reason. But
Hmm.
what were some of your favorite moments of this match, and what did you think about it?
It was a very good match. It was the first ladder match I had ever seen live. So to hear those bumps in person, it just felt different. Like you can hear it. You could just feel the pain. It was a very very good match. I mean, the way they worked the match, especially when they were holding on to the briefcase and hanging, there were just some moments you're like, oh man, it looks like it hurt. But it was a very very stiff match. But yeah, hearing them
Snug, no pun
snug,
intended.
no, snug. But when they hit the ladder, that was just it's different to hear it in person because it's just so loud and it's just their bodies. But it was a fun match to watch live. Like those are two that I grew up watching for a long long time. One of my first favorite matches of theirs was Halloween Havoc from WCW. So I've been following their rivalries for a hot minute. But I enjoyed this match, so it was really really good to see live. But some of those bumps, the back body drop that Ray did to Eddie, where Eddie looked like he almost missed the ladder but still caught the corner, was like, damn, that shit must have hurt. So those ladder bumps were intense.
Yeah, dude, some big thumps that you heard,
Yeah.
some big bumps. We also had an interference there. Vicky Guerrero, Dom got involved. Little
Hmm.
Dom tried to move the ladder, and that he got a nice little pop from the crowd as
Yeah.
Eddie Guerrero cornered Dominic Mysterio and pulled his hand back like he was gonna smack
Smack
Dom,
him.
kind of discipline him a little bit, show him who's Poppy.
Yep.
And then we saw Vicky Guerrero. Vicky Guerrero was a big part of this match. She ended up
Yeah.
shoving Eddie off the ladder,
Hmm.
which then later held Eddie down. Vicky did,
Hmm.
while Rey Mysterio got the briefcase. Rey Mysterio won. He got to
Yep.
keep his kid, or
Yep.
Eddie's kid, I should say.
Yeah.
Happy ending. It was a very, very overall emotional fucking match. I got a little emo watching it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, especially knowing now Eddie would pass a
Yeah.
couple months after that. This was basically like one of his last matches, right?
Yes, yeah. And yeah, you go back and just watch it and to know like later that year he would pass. It's just you go back and you're like, damn, that sucks. But I was able to see him in one of his last matches live. So I kind of hold that here because you know, growing up he was one of my favorite wrestlers. So it was a good moment to watch.
Yeah, I bet, dude. And that was actually going to be one of my next questions because we also saw The Undertaker later on this
Mm-hmm.
card, right?
Yes.
I never got to see, out of all the wrestling events that I've gone to growing up, Undertaker
Mm-hmm.
was one that I never got to see.
Mm.
I want to say Eddie was another one, but you got to see all of these people.
Yeah.
I know you kind of talked about it a little bit, but I mean, you got to see Eddie Guerrero. That
Mm-hmm.
you, I think, are very lucky for that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, tell me more. Like, how was that? Like watching Eddie in person? That
You
must have
know
been
what?
crazy.
It's crazy because the first time I saw Eddie uh at a live event, it was a couple years before that. It was right before WrestleMania 20. So that was the first time I got to see him live. I'm lucky because at this event I got to see a lot of my favorite wrestlers live. Growing up, I was a huge Hulk Hogan fan. Shawn Michaels is up there as one of my favorite wrestlers of all time too. Growing up, you know, Batista from Evolution and all that. I got to see The Undertaker, Randy Orton when he was still really young. John Cena, Chris Jericho. Like there were a whole bunch of people that I go back and I'm like, man, I was able to see those people live and in person. So that was really cool. So I got to hold that too because as a wrestling fan, you always want to see your favorites live. I think there's very few people where because I've been to a couple of regular live events too that are untelevised and some Raws and SmackDown. I was able to see a whole bunch of people that I've grown up watching. So this was just icing on top of the cake because all my youth I watched half of these people, and it was just so fucking cool to see it live. So yeah,
That's fucking wild, dude. Yeah,
yeah,
this card was, it was fucking stacked, dude.
yeah,
Yeah, that's one hell of a fucking time, I bet. That's
yeah.
what's up, man.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, so that was Eddie Guerrero versus Rey Mysterio. Uh, one of Eddie's final matches before he passed away, and what a
Yep.
way, to leave a stamp
Mm-hmm.
before, before his passing. A big match like this one, man. It kind of
Yeah.
reminds me like when kind of like the Ultimate Warrior passed away when he made that promo on Raw.
Oh
He
yeah.
talked about a lot of like emotional stuff, and then
The
next thing
next
you
day,
know,
yeah. I mean, what some
yeah,
people say, the ironic thing about that is like it's like he gave his own eulogy before he passed away because he was talking about enjoying your life and different things, and then the next day you hear so like it was like a weird thing of people saying he gave his own eulogy before he passed away, which is just fucking crazy to think about that too. So it's just
hmm
nuts how things just in this world work.
it
So
is crazy to think about. Like, I'm pretty sure, um, I don't know, man. If Eddie, I don't know, it's gonna sound weird to say, but like if Eddie knew that he was gonna pass, and he'd probably be happy that one of his last matches was like with Ray and like a
hmm
big angle like this, and
yeah.
they blew the roof off the joint and all that good
hmm
shit, So it's crazy, man. Crazy
Yeah,
shit to think about.
it is.
Um, let's talk about one of your favorite wrestlers here of all time. We saw Chris Jericho. He had an interview. Good old
Look,
Chris
I
Jericho.
like Chris Jericho back then, right? Present day Chris Jericho is not the same. So this is a different Chris Jericho. They're two different people. So I like this Chris Jericho. 2005 Chris Jericho, great.
He's
2024,
cool.
not so cool.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. What about John Cena? Were you a fan of his? Because Chris Jericho was cutting a promo on Cena
Mm-hmm.
before their match at this
Mm-hmm.
SummerSlam, which we'll get into later on. But Chris Jericho's reminding John Cena who he is. I'm the guy that beat Austin and Brock in the same night. Two legends. I'm a
Mm-hmm.
legend. Um, Honestly, during this time, I didn't really care too much about Cena. But what were your
Mm-hmm.
thoughts on Cena during this time?
I was a big John Cena fan growing up. I mean, watching John Cena, he was also one of my favorites. So I was psyched to see this because this is right before he switched out being the Doctor of Thugonomics, and he was just changing what he was. But I was always a John Cena fan, so I was psyched to see this match. I was excited for it. So yeah.
Nice. So yeah, we'll get into Chris Jericho versus John Cena. Got a lot of cool shit to talk about there.
Mm-hmm.
This next match, dude, I didn't really understand this next match a whole lot, or why it was on this card. It was Eugene versus Kurt Angle. I guess during this time, you want to have Kurt. Yeah, it's one of those matches that people don't really want to remember, I don't think. I want to believe that the only reason they had this is because you want to have Kurt Angle on the pay-per-view card, right?
Right. I think it had something to do with this gold medal. I think Eugene had it. So Kurt Angle was just trying to get it back. Because I think around this time Kurt Angle was having like these weird exhibition matches with his gold medals, and I think Eugene ended up taking it or beating him for it. I can't remember, but I actually forgot about this match too. So
yeah,
it was weird.
Eugene had a valet too. I did not recognize her at all. Like I don't remember. I remember a lot about Eugene's career, but who was that girl? Do you know anything about her?
It was one of the because this was around the time that we're having like the Diva contest. She was a brunette, right? It was I'd have to go back and look. I don't remember because I don't think it was Christy Hemme. No, she was a redhead. Yeah, it was. I don't think it was Christy Hemme. I'd have to go back and look. Yeah, I don't remember.
It was a nice, quick little match. Kurt Angle made Eugene tap out with the ankle lock, but during the match, Eugene was getting big pops because he was using everyone's moveset.
Yeah.
The Rock, Cena, and I think he also threw a stunner in there.
He was like that weird creative superstar where you give him all the regular moves or the finishers is what Eugene was. So that was fun to watch.
Yeah.
So I mean, again, that motherfucker was over too. Like he comes out and it was a big pop when you hear Eugene. So yeah.
Yeah, he was. I remember people loved Eugene.
You can't do that character now though. You wouldn't be able to do a Eugene character now. Too many people would be offended by that.
Yeah, for sure. Most definitely. Up next we had The Undertaker versus a very, very young Randy Orton. This was a rematch from WrestleMania. Randy Orton, this was during his Legend Killer phase, right?
Yes, it was. It was good to see. It was good to see that, but yeah, it was. He was. I forgot how young. Again, 20 years ago, so he was really, really young here.
Yeah, he was the youngest world heavyweight champion in history. This was right after that. This was another great match here that Randy Orton actually won. They had like it was a longer match. They had a good back and forth. Randy and The Undertaker, but the weird thing about this was how Randy Orton's dad, Cowboy Bob Orton, he was in disguise and he got involved in this match. Was this like the first time Cowboy Bob Orton made an appearance during this feud?
Yeah, I think this was right around the time where he started to come out with Randy. So yeah, I think this was the first time that he had come out, and then they were together for I think a little bit for the rest of this year. But it was, yeah, I think this was the start of Cowboy Bob being Randy Orton's manager for a little bit.
And Randy Orton, he beat The Undertaker in this one with an RKO. Obviously, Randy Orton didn't beat Undertaker at WrestleMania, but these two, they go on to have more matches after this, right?
Yeah, I think they end up having a casket match where they set the casket on fire, and then later that year is when they have a Hell in the Cell at Armageddon. So they had two more matches after that. So yeah, two more matches for the rest of the year. So I think because they set the casket on fire, And then Undertaker came back at Survivor Series when Randy Orton had won. Yeah, I did a little bit of research, and then they ended up having a Hell in the Cell at that Armageddon that
Okay,
December. Yeah.
I think I remember that. Randy
Hmm.
Orton won, I believe, the World Heavyweight Championship, and then everyone goes in to celebrate with him, and then that's when the Undertaker shows up.
I don't think
I
Randy
believe
won. I
so.
think it was an elimination match at Survivor Series, it was SmackDown versus Raw, and then they all
Okay,
came out. All the SmackDown came out to celebrate, and that's when the Undertaker made his return.
I think yeah,
Hmm.
that sounds about right.
Yeah.
That's why you're here, Jay. You're here to clear things up here in this crazy head of mine. So
Hey, I
thank
try
you for
my
that.
best, man. I try my best, man.
All right. Moving on. The next match for this SummerSlam 2005 was Chris Jericho versus John Cena. The feud, and you could correct me if I'm wrong and add more to this. The feud was Eric Bischoff pretty much appointed Chris Jericho as John Cena's first opponent on Monday Night Raw because I believe John Cena, he was the first draft pick for Monday Night Raw of that year, right?
I think so. Yeah, I think that's when they had switched the world champions from SmackDown and Raw. So I think yeah, John Cena was the first draft pick that year for the draft, and he was still the
Hmm.
world champion. Yeah.
And man, I mean, you mentioned earlier that you were a big fan of John Cena during this
Hmm.
time, and me, not so much, dude. I don't.
Hmm.
When I was a fan, when I was a younger fan, I didn't really look at like wrestling the way I do now. Obviously,
Right.
like now I know why John Cena was so good. Now I
Hmm.
know why people liked him so much. He's a
Hmm.
great worker. You know, he was a freak athlete and he puts in the time. He does, you know, he grinds and all that good stuff.
Yeah.
But I wasn't really a fan of like the whole rap
Yeah.
gimmick. You know, it was just I don't know. It wasn't for me.
Well,
The belt.
ironically, this was that
Mm,
time that people started to boo him though too, because he was getting booed in DC. So this is when
mm,
people around that time, because if you watch the match back, people were cheering for Chris Jericho. So a lot of people were sharing that sentiment that you had. So this is
mm.
around that time where people were getting tired of John Cena and they started to boo him. And I think this is where
Okay.
it started too. So you weren't the only one, because I mean, there were a lot of people in the arena that night that were booing him. There were bigger Chris
Okay.
Jericho fans. So yeah.
Okay, good. That makes me feel better then.
Yeah.
What about that championship belt? What were your honest opinions about that spinner belt, Jay?
I have a replica at home, so it's definitely one of my favorite ones.
Oh
I
no.
do, I do. Ironically, I posted a TikTok with it today. So yeah, I have that one and the world title. So I was one of those people that I like the spinner belt. So yeah,
Why though? Was it because John Cena had it?
it was cool. I mean, around this time, and again, because I'm really old, this is when the spinner rims were out.
I
So
remember the spinner rims. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
so he had made the U.S. title a spinner. So the thing is, with him making the U.S. title a spinner, people, that's what their expectations were. So he had made that a spinner. So and it was the time. It was the time frame. It was cool, and it was. I have it. I still have it at home. So yeah, it
It
was one
was
of my.
cool.
It was cool. So at that time, I mean, 20 years ago, people look back and say it's one of the ugliest titles, but at that time, people were loving it. So yeah,
Oh man, they got you, Jay. They got you, man.
they
I
got me.
hated that thing with a passion, dude.
Mm,
Since I was a kid, I'm like, dude, this is the most prestigious belt because at the time it was more prestigious than the World Heavyweight Championship, right?
yes, yes.
Dude, I'm like, man, I would hate to fight for that spinner belt. I'd rather just go for the World Heavyweight Championship in that case, because fuck that shit.
I know there's a lot of people, but in my defense, they got me with the spinner belt, but I also have the big gold belt at home too, so I have both.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Okay.
if I so hopefully I redeem myself because I have the big gold belt at home too.
Yeah, you're good then. Kind of, yeah, it cancels out. Now we're
Okay,
good.
cancels out. We're good.
Um, yeah, so we saw John Cena versus Chris Jericho here. John Cena retained the WWE Championship with his FU or the Attitude Adjustment, or what did he call it at the time? I think it was
it was still the FU at this time. So yeah,
we
I think
can't
he was
call
still
it that anymore.
no. It's yeah, but at that time it was still called. I believe it was still called the FU, but I think it was right before they became PG where they changed the name of it. So.
And what was it like watching the match live and in person with Jericho and John Cena at the time?
It was good. Like I said, people were booing John Cena, so it was an interesting match because Jericho was the heel, but it was a fun little match. But I think this is where also all of John Cena's matches at the time were all the same. He would get his ass whooped for the entire match, do his his comeback, and then win the match. So if you go back around this time frame, all of his matches kind of look the same. But people were booing him. I was still a big John Cena fan, so I was happy to see him win. So it was cool to see, but people were booing the shit out of him, though.
Yeah, this was.
I would quantify seeing John Cena getting booed versus Roman Reigns, because when we did the Battleground one, it was I think it was a little louder for John Cena, but it was just crazy because ironically I was also a Roman Reigns fan and people hated them around that time too, where they were both being booed. So it was just interesting to see that, but it was a fun little match.
Yeah. Oh, we got a comment. We got a couple comments here from a YouTube page. Seth freaking Rollins YouTube page says hello. So we got Seth Rollins, the architect there.
Oh, well, welcome the drip god to the live.
Yeah, for real. Roman Snow 13 said, "Yep, it was the FU." Thank you for your comment, Roman Snow. But yeah, that was John Cena versus Chris Jericho. Peak Chris Jericho too, back in his, he had the short hair during this time, which I don't know, like I remember different phases of Chris Jericho during this. You said that you were a fan of Chris Jericho during this time too. Now, not so much.
No, it's just I've outgrown him in terms of how he does things. So, but that's a.
But not John Cena. You haven't outgrown John Cena.
No, I haven't. But the thing is, also John Cena knew when it was the right time to step away. Let's just leave it at that.
True. Can't miss him if you don't go away, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So.
All right. Let's talk about the other world championship in the WWE during this time. The better looking championship, the World Heavyweight Championship. JBL, the wrestling god, versus Batista. Batista was the current champion at the time. Yep. And this turned out to be a no-holds-barred match. Anything goes for the title. Because it was anything goes, they start the match. It was a jump start on the ramp, which I thought was funny because Batista had to make sure he got his entrance in.
Yeah.
He was still doing the entrance when JBL was rushing him, and then he finished doing his entrance, and then he started fighting, which I thought was hilarious. Kind of how like when Jeff Hardy ran out to save his brother
he
while
still
dancing.
Yeah.
It was kind of the same thing here.
You got to get your shit in, right?
Get your shit in, for sure. Batista was in his hometown during this match.
Yep, he's from Washington, D.C.
And he got a big pop.
Yes.
Man, Batista, he was one of the ones that out of nowhere, it looked like his popularity just like shot up during this time, didn't it?
Yeah, it was like right at that same time that John Cena kind of was over. But I feel like Batista, there was something about Batista that was still a little bit higher in terms of his popularity. I just think the story that he kind of went through with Evolution and then getting the world championship, I think his was not a little bit more organic, but I just feel like people just gravitated to him more. But yeah, I mean, here, they were the 1 and 2 top baby faces of the company. I think this is one of the few times where both titles felt important at the same time too, just because of how they were both presented. It's a little different now once you go down through the history of when they had both champions. But yeah, I mean, Batista was over. Like there was like no
Yeah.
wrong he could do here. So, and he was in his hometown. So yeah.
And that basically was the SmackDown belt, wasn't it?
Yes, yeah. He had
Yeah,
just
yeah.
been drafted to SmackDown. Yeah.
Yeah, I always like to I guess kind of like study how Batista's career ended up being a huge
Mm,
success.
mm-hmm.
But we've seen other guys that have like the similar features as Batista that didn't really get the shine that Batista did or get like the level of success that Batista did, like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, big freak athletes like, you know, Chris Masters
Yeah.
or I I wrote some of these other guys down. Nathan Jones, you remember Nathan
Yeah. I
Jones?
remember Nathan Jones. Yeah.
And even Ryback.
Mm-hmm.
These guys, they I mean they had a little bit success, but they never really made it to the main event or top card
Yeah.
like Batista did. I know you talked a little bit about that, but what do you think made Batista stand out more compared to all like these other guys?
I mean, Batista has charisma. If you really look at him, the way he presents himself, I mean, he wasn't a bad promo. I mean, there's just um he was just he has more charisma than those other wrestlers. When he's out there, it's just his mannerisms, the way he acts, the way he just doesn't look like he's a robot. He's very charismatic. You know, for a big guy, I think that goes very, and he was actually really good in the ring. I mean, there, you know, he had plenty of great matches. I mean, if you go back and watch some of his, all of his matches with Triple H were, I mean, you can't tell me that any of them were bad. The matches he had with Shawn Michaels, even some of the matches he had with John Cena, I mean, Randy Orton, like he could go in the ring. And then I just think people just gravitated towards him because people hated Triple H so bad around this time that when Evolution was growing apart, people looked at Batista and they're like, okay, well, when is this one? When are they going to turn on Batista? Because it was like right around that time. It's just Batista just carries himself differently, and he's more charismatic. He has more personality than those other wrestlers too. Ryback was good when he first started, but he just didn't have the personality to stick around. Nathan Jones was just drywall. Like he had no personality at what as well. But I just think Batista has charisma and he's actually really good in the ring. So when you put both of those together, and then eventually when you look at him, like his style though too, the way he dresses, the way he presents himself is just it's just very
Money.
very different. So yeah, he screams
Yeah.
money, and now he's just a fucking good ass actor too. So let's just add that to his resume of why he's just all around a great package. So yeah.
Yeah. Very very successful wrestling
Hmm.
career and career overall.
Yeah.
Um yeah, because we saw when he first started, he was what Leviathan over with brother Devon is when he first
Yeah.
started.
When Devon was running that Reverend gimmick. So
Hmm.
yeah.
Cool. Well, yeah, it was good to see you know, Batista work his
Hmm.
way to the top. That was pretty cool. And this match was also great.
Hmm.
JBL is another great fucking wrestler, heel
Yeah.
performer. It was one hell of a match, and
Hmm.
JBL made Batista look like $1 million in his hometown.
Hmm.
Batista hit the big Batista bomb on the steel steps and
Yes.
retained the world heavyweight title. What was this match like for you watching it live in action?
It was good. It was good. The match was really good. From what I can remember. JBL doesn't get enough credit on how good he was in the ring. You know, he made a lot of people. And he made Batista and the because JBL's a big dude too. So for him to make Batista look like a big monster when JBL I feel like is a little bigger than Batista. It was just good to see. And then when you hear the power bomb on the steps, that was just fucking awesome. So to hear that and Batista just winning again, it was cool to see. So yeah, it was fun.
Nice. The main event, legend
Hmm.
versus icon, Shawn Michaels versus Hulk Hogan.
Hmm.
Shawn Michaels begged Hulk Hogan for one more match, one more match. Team up with
Hmm.
me. And You know, just it's a dream to team up with Hogan, and they do.
Mhm.
And then the story goes: Shawn Michaels after the match super kicks Hulk Hogan, and we're off to the races for this match at
Mhm.
SummerSlam. Um, I've heard many stories about this match nowadays because this is the it's mostly I feel like remembered by Shawn Michaels overselling.
Yeah.
Now I've heard different stories like this was he was kind of going to business for himself. Shawn was Hulk
Mhm.
Hogan. I've heard was not very happy about that fact. It
Yeah.
was kind of like disrespectful. A lot of people thought it was disrespectful. Um, but overall, I mean, what do you think was happening here? What did you think when you first saw Shawn Michaels flipping all over the place?
You know what? Because growing up watching Shawn Michaels, when he would ever fight bigger guys, that's what he did. So we just thought that he was just trying to make Hulk Hogan look really good. Not until you find out years later what it all stemmed from. It was a fun match. Like, I mean, if you go back and watch that match, it wasn't that bad of a match. When you see Shawn Michaels overselling, you just think he's just being a heel, because I think Shawn Michaels was supposed to be the heel in this match.
Yeah,
But I mean, you didn't put two and two together until much later, but it just looked like Shawn Michaels was just overselling and making Hulk Hogan look like what Hulk Hogan was years ago, the immortal Hulk Hogan, and just making all of his moves
mm,
matter like if they were like destroying him. So seeing it live, you were just like, okay, well, he's just being a heel. But then you find out years later there was a lot more intentions about why he did everything the way he did it. But I enjoyed the match live, so it was
yeah,
yeah, we didn't, you don't think that when you're seeing it live. So, but yeah, it
yeah.
was it was yeah.
Yeah, I remember watching it in real time too and thinking the
Hmm.
same thing you were saying. Oh, that's just Sean being Sean. But
Hmm.
what were some of the things that you heard about that or why he did that? Do you remember what you heard? Because I've heard so many different things about this.
So I think because I one of the DVDs, I think the goal was to have multiple matches between Hulk Hogan and Shawn Michaels. Shawn Michaels didn't want to be a heel. It wanted to be, two people wanting to go, babyface versus babyface to see who was better. Hulk Hogan, from what Shawn Michaels says, didn't, he hit everybody with that doesn't work for me, brother. That what he said, it would be better if one was a heel, one was a baby face. With the goal
Yeah.
with the goal being there's going to be multiple matches to see who's going to be better. And when they did that, Shawn Michaels just he said that he's going to do what he does and he's going to make Hulk Hogan look bad by overselling. So,
Oh,
but
yeah.
yeah, even in the DVD, I think even Triple H said the goal was to have multiple matches, and Hulk Hogan didn't want to do that. He just wanted to have the one match go over, and that's why it's
Yep.
now the infamous one-on-one match between Hulk Hogan, the only time they ever had a one-on-one match. Yeah, so because Hulk Hogan didn't want to put Shawn Michaels over, I think that's why it now it's just more of
Yeah.
an infamous match than it is a famous match. But that's what I've heard, that Hulk Hogan wanted it his way, and I think Vince McMahon kind of sided with Hulk Hogan, and Shawn Michaels like, all right, and it, that's when he goes, Vince, he doesn't want me to be a heel, but Vince McMahon told Shawn Michaels, I want you to be the 1997, 1998 heel version, and that's when
Yep.
he turned up the volume and made Hulk Hogan look really really bad,
Yeah.
and that's when it led up to the match being the way it was. So,
Okay. Yep.
mhm,
Okay. It's all starting to come back to me. Yeah.
yeah,
I think Hulk Hogan just he wanted to. He was like, "Yeah, I'm down to have all these matches," but he's like,
hmm,
"I'm winning all of them."
yeah,
He's like, "I don't." Doesn't
yeah.
work for me, brother.
Brother, yep. So I think that's where
Yeah.
and growing, I would used to listen to Bruce Pritchard's podcast, and he would say that a lot. When Hulk Hogan didn't want something, he just said it doesn't work for me, brother, and that's when that whole statement became attached to Hulk Hogan, is when, and then they had this match, and it's followed, the aura of
H-
Hulk Hogan at this point now.
Hogan must pose.
Hmm.
Yeah. Um.
Yep.
Yeah, that makes more sense because yeah, I saw a lot of weird shit in this match like that, the overselling, and
Mm-hmm.
also Shawn Michaels was fucking bitch slapping Hulk Hogan, literally like
Oh
the
yeah,
total sign of disrespect, and I'm like,
yeah.
oh fuck,
And when Shawn
that's
Michaels
crazy.
smacks somebody, I mean, he smacks the shit out of him. Like there's no pulling back. Like if you ever watch Shawn Michaels slap somebody, and I think that was really pissing Hogan off. So when you watch it back and you know all this that happened, though you watch the match very differently going watching it back. So you're like, oh shit,
Yeah.
yep. He was really
Hmm.
trying to piss off Hogan during this entire match.
Excuse me.
No, you're good.
Um, yeah, you also mentioned that Vince asked Shawn Michaels to be, 97, 98 heel Shawn Michaels, and those were the vibes that I was getting, man. Like,
Mm-hmm.
even he was much older during this time, but you
Yeah.
can see like his attitude,
Mm-hmm.
his facials, and I'm like, oh, this is what's up. He's taking it back.
Mm-hmm.
So that was fun to see. We got to see that from Shawn Michaels. We also saw a massive. I don't know if it was a blade job or the hard
Mm-hmm.
way, but Hulk Hogan was bleeding buckets during this match too.
Oh yeah, that was crazy to see live. Like that, the whole ring, and he was just covered like in blood. So that was crazy to see. And the whole mat, like all you see is just the blood stains everywhere, which is so crazy to see.
Yeah, and I want to say that's probably a first for Hogan. Like, can you imagine if they did something like that, like in the early '90s or like the '80s, like with all the little kids and their
Yeah, I,
hero Hulk Hogan is just covered in
I
blood
think
like
the
that?
only, yeah, I don't know if he's ever done a blade job, but I think the only time I've seen him bleed before, gosh, I think it was like early WrestleMania, like WrestleMania 7, WrestleMania 8, which, but
Mm,
it wasn't that bad though. But I don't remember seeing Hogan bleed that often. I mean,
mm.
yeah, so,
No,
but it
you
was,
never. Yeah, you never
good.
saw. You hardly ever saw that from Hulk Hogan because it was
Hmm.
always, Hulk Hogan usually getting the better end of the deal and
Right.
looking good and all that good stuff.
Hmm.
Roman Snow said wrestling would have been canceled. He said if
Hmm.
they did that to Hogan back then. Yeah. Um, After the match, we saw a sign of respect by
Hmm.
Shawn Michaels, which I thought was kind of out of character at this point.
Yeah.
What did you think about that handshake there at the end?
Well, if you watch the video back, Shawn Michaels is shaking his hand, and all he's saying is that I needed to know. That was the
Hmm.
point of the matches, that he just needed to know who was better, and I think Shawn Michaels went back and said that in interviews, like he just wanted to know who was better. That's what it was. People always wanted to see Shawn Michaels versus Hulk Hogan, just like people wanted to see Sting versus The Undertaker, stuff like that. It was always meant to be that, but again, Hulk Hogan said one has to be heel, one has to be a baby face. And I think around like now it's more normal to see two wrestlers shake hand after a match. It's more normal now. It was out of place here because of all the stuff that Shawn Michaels did. So it did feel off here. I mean, when the crowd saw it live, they cheered, but I think if you go back and watch it, it was just misplaced, that handshake. But it was what it was. But I just felt it just threw the match off because you do all that stuff, you talk all that shit, and then now it's just a sign of respect. So I think the match would have been better off if they were both baby faces trying to figure out who was the better of the two. But you know, it was a little
Hmm.
off.
Hmm. Yeah, and that was the main event for SummerSlam 2005. Did anything else happen after the show went off air, or was it just Hogan
Ho-
posing in the middle of the ring?
Hogan was posing in the middle of the ring, and the one thing that I do remember is they had the huge American flag there too.
Mm.
I don't know. I think he had it during the entrance, and I can't remember if they put that on at the end, but he was posing, and everybody went home.
Everyone went home happy.
Hmm.
Now that's what's up. Well, yeah, dude. That was fun to relive, man. And fun going over with you. I learned a lot about this, a lot of things that I didn't know. So I hope everyone did too.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, definitely one of those that you want to go back and watch for sure, right?
Yeah, I mean, again, when I told you about this pay-per-view, I was like, I don't really remember what was on the card, but then it was a pretty star-studded event, so it was good to relive that. So yeah, it was fun to watch.
Definitely, definitely star study. Jay, thank you for coming back on the show.
Thank you for
Um,
having me again.
yeah, dude. Usually this is the part where I'm like, oh, what you got going on, but I already know what you got going on. You're gonna be
Hmm.
back here on the 19th,
On the
and
19th.
it's gonna be a fun time. But other than that, Jay, what else you got going on in the meantime?
Other than that, nothing really, just going into the new year. I think, yeah, just the 19th I got coming up. And then I doing another roundtable podcast with I think the Ruthless Aggression about the Royal Rumble that's coming up, but that's coming up later. So yeah, just the 19th, and I think the 27th is the next one that I'm doing another podcast. So yeah,
Mhm.
just those two, and other than that, just throwing out more content and trying to piss off more people.
That's what's up. Right on, you
Yeah.
guys. Well, thanks everyone that was listening and watching and commenting. My name is Edgar. I'm the host of Snug Wrestling, and we will talk soon.